Hey guys, thanks for joining the podcast today. How's it going?
Good.
Hey, how's it going, Eli? What's up? I see you're in your car.
Just yeah, on the move. I was joking earlier that I feel like one of the NFL players driving to practice today,
Yeah.
talking about, the game plan and my exercise routine or how, so I had a banana this morning. I ate a cutie, like a little clementine, feeling good today. Feeling good. But
Like it.
let's talk
Yeah.
about DeepSeek. Let's get into DeepSeek. It's all the rage. It's the big buzz. I'm curious, you two as engineers, what are you seeing in DeepSeek in your circles? What's standing out to you about it? Maybe we'll start with Chris first, and then
Yeah.
Keith, you just chime in.
I had I had used it a little bit in Cursor before I knew it was from China, and it was like it was about on par with like Claude Sonnet on the type of code it could generate. I was doing a little experiment where I saw this YouTube video where you can turn just DeepSeek R3 into like V0 just on its own, where you load the model up, you kind of spin up a local host, and then you can start to ask it questions, attach files, do anything like that V0 can do, and it does like have really good answers and responses. I think it's impressive. I've seen metrics from Meta where like they're comparing it to Llama and all their models, and it is like performing better. I think part of that is like because China has no like regulations over what it can answer with, so it is kind of like this kind of unhinged model that can just it's free to respond to whatever you want. But there's definitely concerns because I've seen also where like it does track your data. It has telemetry. So that's like why I stopped using it. That's like the basic overview, but dive into it more, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly no expert. I mean, I don't really. I kind of more or less woke up on Monday morning to a bunch of clients and people that we work with asking us questions about.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I know that they were working on it, not that they were working on it, but that it had been released and that people were talking about it. But I feel like the hype cycle really hit like a high point on at least Monday for sure. I know obviously you go on LinkedIn, people are talking about it, but it feels like any other model released, it's everybody that's technical that I know talking about how great it is and all these different
Yeah.
things.
There's a lot of hype around a new model always.
And I feel like, yeah, it works on par with other things. The cost is astoundingly low. They claim that it costs them $5 million to train. They have said that's only the cost of the final training run, which is a fun little statement because you know how many training runs were there.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. My understanding is that on some level it was built using GPT-4 or some other type of model is in like this distillation type process where essentially they ask the model questions to train the other model basically. And then, I mean, I think that the biggest thing to me is that they did it using chips from NVIDIA, like H800 chips, which are distinctly not the H100 chips that everybody is using or like purchasing and using nowadays. Which allows them to skirt the chip ban that the U.S. had in place. Which, I mean, I'm always a fan. I just feel like a lot of the second order effects of this stuff weren't discussed with the like it was released like it was just some other model instead of the fact that like the creation of it is not breaking, but definitely skirting U.S. law. You know, they have a tendency to not like that, the U.S. government. The second order effects of just like privacy and all those types of things. I mean, I know that they say that it's private, that it similarly would work like a llama model in a lot of context. Unless you have it air gapped, I mean, I would be concerned about that potentially. It wouldn't just start piping a bunch of user data in there. I know one of our projects we work with schools, like we're not going to start piping student data into this.
The NVIDIA thing's interesting.
Apparently has that trust, honestly. And so, yeah, I think that I'd love to hear you guys like thoughts on like, is the first order effect of this model is better and cheaper? Do you think that like takes precedent over like potential second order effects that are not necessarily the concern of the developer? Or how do you guys feel about that?
I think another side effect is like I saw that the NVIDIA founder Jensen Huang, it inspired him to dive into the AI. So he's like using all of NVIDIA to kind of use DeepSeek in order to like use their chip because they are based in China, I think, and So
I'm
like
sure that there's a bunch of people in NVIDIA that are pretty fired up that they're
they're
seeing
fired up. Yeah.
hands-on with them. They're probably, yay,
I'll
Jensen's
let,
here now.
I'll let Eli get in here. You like to like talk around the ethics of everything. What do you think about that, Eli?
Well, yeah, everybody's like championing that it's an open source model, and Keith's points are really salient. I think that we have no indication of the data that was actually used to train on it, other than the fact that OpenAI has said that they have verifiable proof that GPT-4 was utilized in the distillation method. And so we don't know what data it was trained on. And also, I think my understanding is that depending on which version you're using, like the local model has less censorship, but when you go to the cloud version, you can talk to it about things that are historically sort of taboo. Think like Tiananmen Square and other sensitive subjects with regard to like China and history. And so it's problematic in my view for a couple of reasons. Like, I think it is an open source model, but it's not necessarily an ethically sourced one, and that should cause concerns. Although then the sort of counter argument is none of these models were ethically sourced, arguably. Or at least we don't actually know. In many cases, there's a lot of hearsay around whether Reddit data's in, Twitter data, these big 800 gigabyte model or data sets, right? And so I think I'm skeptical of the timing as well. Like in my mind, although DeepSeek has been being written about for months, and the sort of innovations that they were making have been coming out white papers over the holiday season, really. There's no accident that the TikTok ban and the launch of DeepSeek that upends the American like AI market are sort of happening synchronously. As very much a part of the geopolitical landscape. And it's crazy because we always joke about like, how are all of these developers kind of getting mixed up in sort of geopolitics, right? It's kind of wild, the sort of centering of the tech broligarchy, as you guys might have seen, right?
I think it's crazy, but I think it's not insane. I mean, the tech companies are the largest by market share companies ever built, and like the four dudes that run them are standing right next to Donald Trump when he's elected president of the United States, or inaugurated as president of the United States, and then all of a sudden TikTok's back. Most importantly, I think it's like these tech, like the big thing is that it affected tech stocks. I think that's where the panic came from. So I think that I saw two reactions in my world. I saw like the developers reacting to the initial model, being like, "This is great. You shouldn't challenge. It's not worse than the other ones." Because I mean, there is a huge argument there that it's just as bad, quote in quotes, as the as an OpenAI model or anything like that. But like I said, the second order effects. I mean, if you're going to put this model, this is the whole problem with AI. If you're going to take a model like this and put it into a business and then sell it to the tune of millions of dollars of ARR to you, I mean, you got to be at least somewhat sure that this thing is going to be there and work. And like, there has to be liability behind it.
I mean, I remember that a year ago, this was called DeepSeek Coder. That was the very first version. And now it's DeepSeek R3 and the other one. And I'm just waiting for like, on the ethics point is like, we talked about to Avi about like, is there going to be a revolution where once people get wise to this and understand that although their collective data was being used to the tune of millions, like, are they going to come for it and say like, hey, you trained on my data that was on the internet, like, give me my share, give me my dollars.
Right? They could kind of do that, but it reminds me more of like the music industry in the 90s with like Nap with a
exactly.
Boom, and it's like, what are you going to do? You can open source model that's going around.
Eventually, now you got to go.
I think that this is actually more of like, to me, like an indication of how people like strongly expect that this is going to happen, right? Like, or that like, that like the small local host like local models are going to really take off in the next year or 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
I do think ultimately like OpenAI is charging, like, I wouldn't say exorbitant prices. I mean, they're charging probably less than it's costing them to do it now. But as all these GPUs that they have coming down the pipe get made, like, I'm a big believer that like there's not going to be that many high end use cases forever, and eventually these H100s will have such a low cost to either produce or to buy because there's too many of them. One of those two things with supply and demand will happen that'll make people force their engineering time onto these models. Because to me, it's like they trained it in a way that like shows that if you focus on performance, you can make the training cost low, or performance of the training run, that you can make this cost lower. And in that way, I think pretty much everybody wins, like in the big tech world, except maybe Google, who has their own chip. Like
But on the other end, like NVIDIA is leveraging their RTX 5080s to use this DeepSeek model. And I'm sure that they're developing like AI GPUs specifically for DeepSeek. So the processing power could go the other way and just have even more GPU leverage to do more things.
Well, I think that it could do both, right? So I think that it's like, I don't know. I haven't really like researched this in theory, but I have like an idea behind that. Like a huge part of where the internet came from is that they made too many, that they learned to really build and produce these computers in the 80s. And then they were like, oh, now we can make them really cheap. What are we going to do with really cheap computers?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll build servers. We'll do these things. I mean, I know it's not exactly like that, so I should do some research if that trend actually makes sense. But all of a sudden, they need an F load of computers. Well, really specifically, they need an F load of chips. Right? And it feels like a very similar thing to me where you'll start seeing the cost. And it's not actually that I think AI won't make money. I actually think quite the opposite. Like even with what I'm talking about, I think OpenAI's position to make a ton. But like it comes down to like it'll end up resembling in my mind like AWS cost, where it's like your AWS cost is like nothing to like compared to a computer in your room, right? Like,
Yeah.
There's just no way. And that, but you can buy you could pay AWS a fortune to have like the fastest possible computer.
Right? So it's an interesting geopolitical quandary, kind of like you said in the beginning, because it's like China controls the chip market, and so they have DeepSeek 3. So how are they going to like they have the capability to like as many chips as they want.
Right. Well, I don't think China doesn't actually control the chip market. I think that's what they want to do.
They want that.
Like the chip market's controlled by Taiwan, which I guess that's political.
Yeah.
So, in China or like in Taiwan is where TSMC is, which I want to say makes 85% of the chips that are sent to them by fabs. So NVIDIA is just a fab. Like they don't produce chips by themselves. Those are all produced by TSMC or, I mean, Samsung produces, mostly TSMC produces all of those chips on the island of Taiwan.
Yeah. I thought that NVIDIA was getting into chip production. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, everyone's trying
almost assuredly, just like, especially just like Apple with the M series chips, like, you know, the M series is going to be just as competitive in the local model space as, you know, people who can have like hardcore gaming rigs, right? Like, if you look at DeepSeek running on like $6,000, you know, gaming machines right now, like it's still slow. It's like 5 tokens a second. It's like it's not great. But then in the cloud spaces, I mean, some of the Grok examples with DeepSeek are ridiculous in terms of output speed. And so I think, like, I personally find the like chip quandary and the chip geopolitics less immediately impacting like the application layer. And I think we've always been really good about staying at the application layer in our business and, you know, focusing on the human computer interface problems of these things. And I would be remiss not to mention my hesitancy around adopting new models that output in ways that are unexpected or uncertain. And we've seen that in our projects, right? Like, you know, going from 3.5 to 4 to 4.0, we saw dramatic behavior shifts in our applications into how they perform with the prompts that we use and the way that we were structuring kind of our chains of reasoning.
Yeah.
And I'm very hesitant at some of the output examples that I've seen about DeepSeek that are highly personal, and oftentimes in the cloud environment, censoring unnecessarily due to the way and where this was trained, without getting into too many opinions about that, right? Like, so my uncertainty is around all of a sudden Claude and Anthropic are using DeepSeek. The outputs that you're getting there, I just don't have enough exposure or belief in yet. And everything that I'm seeing is indicating that they do behave slightly differently to, you know, the 4 series and 01. And so personally, I've been using O1 Pro
Yeah.
very frequently now that I've upgraded to take advantage of Operator and to dig into more of what O1 Pro has to offer through OpenAI's like web services right now. And although O1 Pro is very slow, I have to say, like, the outputs that I get from it and the reasoning I get from it are something that highly resonate with me. And I, I, I think back to, people like Steve Jobs talking about like the way that folks love products. And I'm like, I am in love with O1 and Operator, and I'm so excited about what it can do for our business. And I just, I think the jury is out for me on DeepSeek. I'm not convinced until I see more. Because, like, how do we know these people, even though you're downloading it locally, how do we know we're not just like spreading malware
Could
right
be
now?
Tony
Like,
Hum.
has anybody actually like dug into that? Like, can they perform telemetry on installed local models remotely? Like, to the air gap point that Keith brought up,
Oh yeah, so that's really the only way you could check it. And I mean, I think that's pretty much a way to say that yeah, this thing's air gapped. It's running on my AWS VPC. It should be fine. But I think that it speaks to like a broader point of like I think that you have like these higher reasoning, the more expensive protocol, definitely way more expensive to train models like O1. And then you have DeepSeek running at the other end of the market. And I don't think like smart and stupid is the right way to think about the models. It's more just like
because they're all smart now.
very clearly like and like kind of the problem we're dealing with in like working directly with businesses and trying to figure out how to build out these AI products is that it's very unclear what a product needs to do now in terms of like they use like this word cognitive architecture is thrown around a lot, meaning like how do you set up your AI calls, how do you get this AI to think so to speak to the user.
Yeah.
And so much of that like isn't solved yet, but I could very clearly see a use case for like one that can answer really hard questions versus one that can answer a long sequence of simple questions. Those are like useful in two different ways. And it kind of depends on the task that the app has to do, right? Kind of the amount of data it has to process with its RAG system, et cetera. But having both available allows you to build like a very potent AI system, just like being able to hire somebody at your company for the high end of the salary spectrum for a very specific esoteric job. Like that's expensive. That person has training to do that thing. And then you might need to hire 100 people to do another task that's not necessarily the cognitive ability of the task, but more like the market rate of the task.
Yeah, the Claude situation's weird right now because like I know Keith used Claude in Cursor, and the last week I had been getting like really bad results from using Sonnet. And so I looked it up. I kind of looked through all the forums and sure enough, like it's everywhere right now. People are complaining about the quality of Claude. And so like it's a known issue that Claude has decreased in its efficiency. And so if I'm not sure if this is what you meant, Eli, but like if they are using DeepSeek and their quality has decreased, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it kind of shows how hard these models are to like maintain as well. Like I imagine that like Claude just released an update, and like I mean, do you guys remember when we were younger and Facebook released the newsfeed and how pissed everyone was? Like now these
People hate change in their software.
the product is so esoteric now that it's like
it is
like I've always liked these chats that I've had with it. I think these are the best, and in no way do those resemble like the next person like you would think.
Yeah, but it's like objectively not good right now what it's doing. It's
well,
like
and
worse.
yeah,
No,
I wanted to mention that.
Yeah,
Well, and also that's why they were so quick to jump on including DeepSeek in Claude in the web portal, is because if they're getting a ton of complaints about Sonnet,
Yeah,
they're going to go ahead and give you something else that might be trendy and attractive.
yeah,
And to me, like a takeaway that I would want to leave people with, and I want to hear y'all's before we close, is like when we're building and designing these generative AI applications, this only underscores the relevance and importance of model agnostic development right now.
yeah.
The pace of change is ridiculous. The behaviors are unpredictable. We need to be able to quickly adapt and not hitch our wagon to anyone. Although I am an OpenAI fanboy, openly an O1 fanboy, like I'll take that criticism, but I am always down to vet alternatives and maintaining the ability to hot swap models for different purposes, like Keith was mentioning, whether they're in the same model family or across different providers, is of utmost importance this year. Like, in addition to local, but like model agnostic approaches are key. I mean, there's no way getting around.
Yeah. So like my take would be that, we in our work building workflows with AI, like where we utilize right now both OpenAI platforms, and we have the Claude Anthropic API key as well using that, and they're pretty much synonymous and can be swapped out. The problem is with O1 and like it is not good at analyzing code and kind of making code changes. It's better at reasoning, and in order to make it agnostic, it's a lot more work to get O1 in there because it requires structured output and a lot more like foundation in order to support it. But the other guys, the 4.0 and Claude Sonnet, they can be swapped out pretty easily, and they work kind of like they tend to generate the same answers.
Right? Like they tend to generate the same answers, but I think the big thing is that like to me the big thing is just control. Like if like right now like we're sending API requests to OpenAI to do very significant things in the application, right? And if we could control that and have it in our own infrastructure, it makes the application safer, likely faster, and the cost more maintainable and predictable as well.
Yep.
And I think that's eventually where this is going to go. Or that, I mean, I don't think it's even OpenAI's fear. I know they're not really in that space, but like people using these AI models more prevalently makes like if OpenAI then could differentiate themselves in the specialist models or the ones that can do the more intense reasoning, they could still make just as much money as they're claiming to be OpenAI.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's let the wars play out at the like foundational layer and the domain layers. And I think staying close to the application layer is like where we can make the greatest impact in our talent and for the businesses that we work for sure. Like if we stay focused on the way people touch these things in really rich ways, we can't go wrong right now.
The caveat to that is if anyone listening has access to an H100 themselves, that should use that.
You know, one idea kind of that springs up is that in code you can kind of like pin things in the version that works. So like one thing just kind of for safety purposes is like we could take a version of Claude Sonnet that was currently working, pin it to that version, and then when they come out with DeepSeek and it doesn't work right, we can always use that same version and train it up.
Yeah, that's what we did on the education project is we pinned to the August version of 4.0 right now to maintain consistency. Because we did get bit, pretty hard, by one day, our users saying all of a sudden the AI is performing wildly differently. And do you remember, Keith, we had to go and kind of hunt as to why. And it was just very clearly that the switch from the November model to the August model that happened last year was a huge behavior shift. And so, like, you don't want the ground you're standing on shifting out from under you in any way. You want control, like Keith said. I think that's a great point.
Right.
So, Keith, anything that you want to share before we close up, and then we'll jump off?
No, I don't think there's anything. I was just going to say that, having such a critical function of your application go out to a third party and an API call where like they could push an update to that API and honestly not tell us. They probably do that all the time.
Probably.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like as these models change, it requires like constant updating to your app in ways that you can't even like predict before you really try out the new model in the app. But then I think there's also going to be specialization in the apps of different models doing different things. Like if you think about a web page, you could have 5 different calls going out to 5 different models doing 5 different things that give you the UUC. And I don't know, that's where I think it's going to go. I think it's going to go towards this like lower end market, people doing crazier and crazier things on cheaper hardware until eventually there's a proliferation to where this costs not basically pennies to run, which still makes everybody a ton of money at scale.
You use the LLM itself to update the LLM API.
Right. And then I think the final word would just be play with DeepSeek. Don't build enterprise businesses with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too early.
Well,
thanks a lot, guys, for the chat. I appreciate y'all jumping on. Let's all get back to work. Let's keep building some cool shit. And I hope you have a fabulous day.
Cool. See you guys.